Live from the 22 News Broadcast Center, this is a Decision 2015 special program. Today, the Westfield mayoral debate. And now, here's Rich Teddemer.
Good afternoon. 22 News is working for you as we let the candidates you'll see on the ballot on Tuesday, November 3rd, debate the issues. Today, it's the candidates running for mayor of Westfield. Westfield City Council President Brian Sullivan will debate Mike Roeder. This is a Lincoln-Douglas style debate where the candidates will ask each other the questions with time for answers and rebuttal. First, each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. Mike, you go first.
Thank you. Brian, good luck. I'm running for mayor of Westfield a second time. 2 years ago, I ran because there was no challenger to the incumbent, and I felt that that was typical of the political practice in the city of Westfield. So I ran, lost by a few votes. It was a good experience. Running again because we knew when Mayor Knappich announced he wasn't running in January that there was no challenger in the wings, and when I was asked by a reporter on New Year's Day, am I going to run, I said yes. So I've been running since January on a number of issues that I think are resonating with the citizens of Westfield, the taxpayers of Westfield. I've addressed these issues at length locally with the door-to-door campaign that has covered some 2,200 homes. The issues that existed 2 years ago are even more pronounced today, and they are keyed on tax relief, roads. The roads in Westfield are a disaster.
That's time, Mr. Roeder.
Thank you.
You have 60 seconds for your opening statement. Brian Sullivan, your opening statement, please.
Good afternoon, and good luck to you too, Mike. I appreciate it. My name's Brian Sullivan, and I'm running for mayor of the city of Westfield. I want to let you know over the next half hour what my views, my goals, my ambitions are for the next 2 years for Westfield. I've lived in Westfield for over 50 years, graduated from the public schools, lived on the south side of town, and now reside on the north side of town. I've raised my 2 children in Westfield, both also going through the public schools, and now they're both attending college. So I understand all the struggles that we all are living every day. Taxes, roads, college bills, household bills, and I want to bring that knowledge and I want to bring experience that I've gained over the last 18 years of being on the city council to the mayor's office. I was elected 8 different times as president of the council because of my leadership qualities and the trust that my colleagues have in me. My goal today is to make sure that you can also have that trust and you will let me be your leader. Thank you.
Once again, this is a Lincoln-Douglas style debate where the candidates have a chance to ask each other the questions. Each candidate gets 30 seconds to ask a question, 60 seconds to answer, then 30 seconds for rebuttal. And Brian Sullivan, you get to ask the first question.
Mike, in recent political publications and public forums, you've committed your support to increasing the city's yearly bond payment to $8 million, guaranteed reconstruction of Wood Road, supported new radios for emergency responders, and proposed moving the new elementary school at a cost which will surely equate to at least hundreds of thousands of dollars. You promised to do all these things without raising any taxes. I'd like to know what your plan of action is to do this.
Well, that's a big issue, a lot of issues, and I can't possibly explain in a minute, but it'll essentially mean a level funded budget for fiscal year 2017. We're going to take a look at every expense line item to see where cuts can be made short of layoffs. And we're going to take a look at other things like overtime that is not specifically covered in contracts. You name it, it's going to get a look. And I do believe that we can pass a budget for fiscal year 2017 that will allow no tax increase that fiscal year.
Rebuttal.
Thank you. My plan of action has already started. When the new mayor takes office in January, we will be halfway through our fiscal budget and the planning for the next budget. I've met with all the department heads that can come to the table and give me some ideas and approaches on how we can change what we're doing today. One of the pet peeves of mine is to say we don't do things that way or we've always done things that way. It's time that we change that, and my plan of action is to regroup, reorganize, and reestablish.
Mike Roeder, your first question, please.
The contribution reports came out yesterday. You did quite well. I didn't do so well. You took plenty of special interest money, contributions from city employees, contributions from contractors who have contracts with the city, consultants, and the unions. I take none of it. How do you think that's going to endear you to the taxpayers who are going to the polls next Tuesday night?
Well, I don't think they're called special interests when they're friends, relatives, and supporters. One thing about running a campaign, and let's be honest, it's an unfortunate part to have to raise money and to spend on advertising and materials and things. But I was successful at doing that. I've been working at it for over 10 months, getting out my message, asking for support, and those people that had the ability to do it not only asked me how they could help, but would come to me with financial backing. I appreciate the fact that in tough times they're willing to do that, and it shows me that they're willing to not only be behind my back, but be next to me as I'm going through this process. So I'm not going to apologize for any of the money that I raised. All of it was in good faith and support. All of it was used correctly, and I will do it with the same with the budget, is I have some money left over today for emergency basis as we move forward.
Rebuttal.
At the national and state levels, it's in fact a problem. People perceive that special interests have undue influence. My position has always been no contributions from city employees, no contributions from contractors having contracts with the city, no contributions from contractors trying to do business with the city.
Brian Sullivan, your next question, please.
Mike, you're now proposing that we scrap plans for a new elementary school in Ashley Street and start over with a new site, which will certainly disrupt South Maple and Riverside neighborhoods, and spend additional millions of dollars on infrastructure improvements that will severely impact our recreational space. My question is, why would you do this?
Go ahead.
This school has been a problem in the courts now for about 4 years. I think a compromise is necessary. I'm looking at alternate sites so that we can end the court battle, not have to worry about Ponders Hollow and the cost, get a bid out there so that we can maybe dig pretty soon. I would hope in the next 6 months to a year. That was called unrealistic last night, but I'll tell you, we've gotten to a point in the city of Westfield where this school has to be resolved. The school issue has to be resolved. That is the one thing that people told me as I knocked on doors. We need the school thing to end. It's not about not building the school. I support the school, but not 3 or 4 years from now. This is the kind of thing which cries out for compromise, and that's what I'm working on very hard.
Rebuttal.
My approach has always been support of the school and where it's being located. We did site reviews 6, 7 years ago to find out what best fit for the kids down in that neighborhood. The students would be able to get the better education than they are now based on the schools that they're in. Abner Gibbs is a great neighborhood school, but it's run its life, and it's time to give those children an opportunity to get what the other kids in the elementary schools in Westfield are getting. The process has worked. It's time to get that school built.
Mike Roeder, your next question, please.
Let's stay on the school issue. The case in court right now started around 2012, but there was a very key event which precipitated this lawsuit on August 8th, 2011. You and several others, including the mayor, were at a Parks and Rec meeting to transfer the land from Parks and Rec to the school system. One of the counselors and one of the Parks and Rec commissioners asked you if we were going to get into the same situation with Paper Mill in terms of replacement land. You responded no, that there was no protected space on Cross Street. Yes. Did you know that that wasn't true when you said that?
Well, there's certain aspects in that process that did come to light after. My response at the time was absolutely truthful, and every information that we had at that time meant that we did not have to find land. The process then said that we did, and what we did was find land, find property that we could move and transfer within city departments costing no money to be able to have a piece of land to protect from the parks. So when I said no, I meant no, and for all the information that we had at that time, and I will stick behind that, was no. And as it moved forward, it had to go through history to find out that that land was actually protected back well before the records that the city had. But we found a resolution, and that's part of the process. That's why I say that school can go there today. We don't have to scrap it all and move it, because let me tell you, the location that you want to put it in is a whole bunch of other areas that we're going to have to go through.
Rebuttal.
Well, I'm not assessing the full responsibility of what has happened in the last 4 years in court to you, but the fact of the matter is the answer should have been yes. It was protected land, and when the application was made to the MSBA, which you had nothing to do with, I'll grant you that, the idea that it was protected land wasn't mentioned in the application. That rightfully resulted in a lawsuit that is wrapped up in the courts today, and sadly, in my humble opinion, will be wrapped up in the courts for the next 2 years.
Brian, your next question, please.
Thank you. In talking with the police chief in regards to what would be his priority if he had one wish that he could have when I take office, his response was parking. And I asked, really? And he said, yes, down in that area, parking is terrible. Between the Westfield State students that park on Washington Street, the police department, and the businesses that want to flourish down there. What will you do for the parking in that area?
Well, I think a lot of that is in the works right now, and I'm happy to see it. Unfortunately, the money that was going to be used to demolish the bowling alley, the building owned by the Romano family, could not be used for that. We find out after almost 2 years of preparing, but that money is now going to be used to demolish a building just off the main street for parking. All that is good. The police chief is a wonderful guy, but I tell you, if I were the police chief, I would be looking at things like the heroin problem that we have in the community, which is, by the way, not unique or isolated to Westfield by any means. I would have some concerns as the police chief about the way these courts are handling all these arrests. So that's a social issue for sure, but I don't think that the parking, quite frankly, is as bad as everyone makes it out to be. I'm downtown all the time, and I think that those few spots that are going to be added on with this purchase of the building
It's time, Mr. Roeder.
is an excellent step towards alleviating a problem that has existed for a while. Yes.
Rebuttal.
I'm going to attack the parking problem like I'm going to try to attack every issue that's going to be in front of me, and that's communication. We can have a business district downtown that talks with the police department and Westfield State University to be able to solve problems that exist. Parking should not be an issue when we have that much property, but it's sometimes a good issue. That means people are going downtown. That means people are using those businesses. That means we've brought the college down to live there. I will work to solve that issue.
Mike, your next question, please.
I want to stay on the schools. One more question. I understand that you want to stay on Cross Street. I have a different venue. That's good. I think that gives people a choice. But if you had, theoretically, if you had to make a choice on an alternate location for that school, theoretically, where would it be?
Actually, my response is that I don't want to have an alternate. So it's a tough question. So if you're telling me I have to scrap things and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars more to find a location that we've already done the site assessments for, and there wasn't a good place to put that except for Ashley Street, it'd be very hard for me to answer that. But if you're forcing me to answer a question like that, and I'm going to try to answer it, I would try to look at maybe reducing the size of that building. I think the school that used to be there, Ashley Street, was a good neighborhood school, and you bring in the students. It's not about the building, and it's not about the lawsuits. It's about the students. That's the best access for walkers in the downtown area. That's the opportunity that those students deserve, that the other students in Westfield have. So I still wouldn't look for a new site. I'd have to start with reducing maybe the size of the school and start over in that process, which is going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Rebuttal.
A neighborhood school on that location would be acceptable to the plaintiffs today. However, the main concern I have is that this current case, and it does relate to students, it does relate to their parents, it does relate to the well-being of the city of Westfield. This case, if it goes to the Supreme Court, even if it goes to a home rule petition, is 2 years away, if I'm correct. I think that is a disaster. And the other problem that I see
Mr. Roeder.
is that there are other lawsuits potentially in the works.
Okay, candidates, we're going to take a short 2-minute break right now, and then more questions for the candidates running for mayor of Westfield. You're watching 22 News.
Live from the 22 News Broadcast Center, this is a special Decision 2015 edition of 22 News.
Welcome back to the debate featuring the candidates running for mayor of Westfield. Westfield City Council President Brian Sullivan is opposed by Mike Roeder. They're in the middle of a Lincoln Douglas-style debate where the candidates ask each other the questions with time for answers and rebuttal. Brian Sullivan, you have the next question.
Thank you. As mayor, I will commit myself to building relationships and strengthening communications with all department heads. In your radio interview, you acknowledged that meeting with department heads has never even crossed your mind. How can you run on issues that are going to be facing this city when you start office and you haven't spoken to the people that are in charge?
Well, I had an option in terms of the campaign development. That was not one of my options. My option was to spend as much time as I could in the field, and that's what I did. My answer to that was, when I get elected, that next 8 weeks of transition, I'll be talking to all of the department heads as the mayor-elect, and I will listen to what they have to say. And then we will discuss their priorities, and then I will tell them what my priorities are and what I see as important and the way I want it done. I would much prefer to be in that position as a mayor-elect than as a candidate who has really no authority to ask anybody for anything. Plus, if you look at the websites and the information available on the web, I felt I had enough information during the campaign to talk about these issues realistically.
Rebuttal.
Thank you. I've made it a point to talk and discuss issues with the department heads, from the superintendent to the police chief to the engineering department, to find out what's in front of us right now, what do we need to fix, what do we need to change, and how can we go about thinking out of the box. Westfield has been doing very well economically, but we can do better. As the manager and the mayor and the CEO, I want to be able to bring all those people together in one room, figure out the issues, solve the problems, and that's what I've been doing for the last 10 months.
Mike Roeder, your next question, please.
During the campaign, I said I would stabilize tax rates in fiscal year 2017. You announced recently that you would use $1 million in free cash to give taxpayers a tax reduction now. I want to ask you, what is your perception of the actual amount of free cash that we have available today for the city?
Today that number stands at $1.9 million. That's called free cash. That's money left over after a budget season where we've paid all of our bills, all of our employees, and the budgetary numbers have that amount. 1.9 sits in that account right now, and we are in good standing to get about another 1.2 by the end of this year, which will give us somewhere around $3 million. I made a promise, and I will stick to that promise, that it's about time some of that money went back to the ratepayers to help with the tax rate. I made the commitment, we voted on it in the past, and I will commit as mayor to put that request through to the city council to request that they use that money to help offset some of the tax incentives.
Rebuttal.
The amount of money available is actually much less, because I think, Brian, you'll agree with me that $1.9 million of that has got to go to fill the budget gap, and that was agreed to by the council last December, which is now about $2.3 million. So even if you had $1 million in free cash approved for for this year. That's coming down the pike. What bills would have to be paid before you could give that $1 million to the taxpayers? Because you said all bills would have to be paid first.
That's time, Mr. Roeder. Brian Sullivan, your next question, please.
Thank you. Over the past 20 years, the City Council has gone to great strides to ensure and protect our water resources in the City of Westfield. If you are elected, what steps will you take to complete this process?
Repeat the question, please, Bear.
Over the past 20 years, the City Council has gone through great strides to ensure and protect the water sources of our City of Westfield. And if you are elected, what steps will you take to complete this process?
Well, right now, I believe the Water Department has planned over the long term to allocate approximately $24 million, much of it bonded, towards the maintenance of water delivery services to the city, which is absolutely critical. I don't have any particular concern about that type of bond because the bond would be paid off by rates generated through that agency. That is different than bonding other projects that the taxpayers have to pay for. True, we pay water fees, and those fees are probably going to go up. I think when you talk about water, you're talking about one of the absolute services required in the City of Westfield, and we have to support maintenance of the quality.
Rebuttal.
Well, my question was about the water resources, not the water distribution and the drinking water. Basically, what I wanted to know and what I am doing is leading a charge with a colleague of mine to purchase the final piece of property in Granville to protect the Granville Reservoir. It's a major piece of property that we don't want to see any buildings on or any construction. We want to protect our natural resource. And we've gone to great strides over the last few years to be able to use grant money and solid bonding money to be able to do that.
Mike Roeder, your next question, please.
A question on stabilization funds. Right now we have about 6.2 in stabilization. That represents the city's savings. In your term, just going over the last 6 years, you have consistently supported the use of these funds to meet operating budget shortfalls based on recommendations from the mayor. Why?
Well, my votes, and if you listen at city council meetings when we take this vote, is I'm willing to use that money for one-time purchases as long as we know that we can supplement and get that money back in. The $6.5 million that's in there has taken us a long time to get there. And we have done a very good job over the last 10 years, as evidenced by the financial institutions like Standard & Poor's, who have raised our bond rating up. We worked on this a long time ago with Councilors Liptak and Onifree, that we would get to a safe number, that financially we would look good, we would have a rainy day fund that we could fall back on, and if any time we needed to use it, we all agreed at that time that we would only use it if we could replenish it. And we've been doing that, and I would continue to do that as long as I know and as long as I'm assured that we'll be able to replenish what we started. I won't go backwards.
Rebuttal.
One-time expenses, I support that. I've said that from day one. I don't believe we should be using stabilization funds, though, to meet our deficits in terms of our day-to-day operating expenses. Also, in the last bond note, the $51 million note, we do have a good rating, but the people that gave us the money said, look, you got to stop borrowing. It's not going to be good for your long-term fiscal health.
Okay, gentlemen, time for closing statements. Each candidate gets 1 minute for a closing statement. Mike Roeder, you go first.
I enjoyed being here today to talk to Brian. I think it's very clear that there's a clear choice here on many, many issues. And I'm going to say that the vote on Tuesday is absolutely crucial. We have to do better than the average turnout of 6,000 voters in the city of Westfield. There are, as of September 29th, there are 23,272 registered voters in this great city. And my hope, my ideal, I realize it's an ideal, is to get every one of those people, every one of you out there from Westfield watching this, to vote on November 3rd. The polls are open from 7 to 7, and I'm hoping that you'll vote for Mike Roeder. Thank you.
Brian Sullivan, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. I started this campaign 10 months ago with a promise to my campaign manager, Lisa McMahon, promise to my children, Tori and Chris, that I'd run a issues-based campaign, get out and meet as many people as I could and to talk to them and get their concerns, and be able to collaborate and communicate as well as I can. I feel I've done that. We've come to the last week of this campaign, and I'm going to do it right to the end. I feel I'm the right leader with the right experience at the absolute right time for Westfield. I will continue to do that right up until November 3rd, and I'm looking at each one of you watching this right now and asking for you to support me. If you go to the polls on November 3rd, next Tuesday, and cast your ballot for Brian Sullivan. I appreciate the opportunity. I want to continue working on a passion that I've had over the last 18 years, and I'll continue to do a good job for Westfield.
That concludes our look at the debate of the men running for Mayor of Westfield. Thanks to Brian Sullivan and Mike Roeder for participating today. If you missed any of today's debate, you can always watch it again on wwlp.com. Don't forget, Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Thanks for watching. I'm Rich Teddemer. Have a good afternoon.
More people in Western Massachusetts get their news from 22 News than any other source.